Lv Shu was weighing everything in front of him, ready to run with Lu Xiaoyu at any time. As for whether they could escape, all he could do was try his best. However, the group of people in black trench coats didn't seem to intend to entangle with them. They didn't look like the typical villains from TV dramas, who often kill innocently. Surprisingly, they just left at this point. Lv Shu felt a bit relieved. Could they really be from the government? He suddenly remembered the videos and people who had disappeared from previous supernatural events. Could the performer be related to those incidents? When did the government start to have black trench coats as uniforms? They looked pretty good. If they suddenly showed a badge from a mysterious department, Lv Shu might actually believe them. As for the fire brigade they mentioned, let's forget about it. With such an incident, Lv Shu and Lu Xiaoyu, one big and one small, didn't feel like continuing to watch the temple fair. Let's go home. As they were leaving, Lv Shu was lost in thought, looking a bit distracted. Lu Xiaoyu looked up at him. Lv Shu, what are you thinking about? Can you call me brother for once? Lv Shu was a bit irritated. Do we have a blood relation? Lu Xiaoyu looked disdainful. She was a small devil. At this moment, a young man stopped Lv Shu and greeted him with a friendly smile. Did you just come out from the backstage? Can you tell me what happened inside? Who are you? Lv Shu was wary. Nice to meet you, my name is Ji Wei. The handsome young man introduced himself with a smile. How nice. Lv Shu asked. This guy named Ji Wei almost wet his pants. How could this guy play his cards so irregularly? Very nice, I guess. But just as Ji Wei was about to continue explaining, he saw the young man across from him didn't even bother to acknowledge him. He just walked away with the cute little girl, who was hopping around him, said, forget it, I won't argue with you. Ji Wei felt a bit helpless. He decided to go and see for himself. There should still be many witnesses inside. They should be easier to deal with than this young man. After walking for a while, Lv Shu looked back at the young man's figure and furrowed his brows. Lu Xiaoyu said calmly, Lv Shu, you seem a bit off today. Xiaoyu, what would you do if there were many people in this world who were more powerful than normal people? Lv Shu asked. If the performer really had a problem, did the palpitations in his heart mean he also had a problem? Of course, I would be more powerful than them, Lu Xiaoyu said naturally. After hearing this, Lv Shu pondered for a moment, then smiled as if he had figured out something. You make it sound so simple. But it makes sense. Let's go home. Lu Xiaoyu continued on her own. Lv Shu, you're so weak, you definitely can't do it. You can't even play basketball with your classmates for 5 minutes without panting. But it's okay, if you can't do it, I can. I'll protect you in the future, you just need to cook for me. Ha, Lv Shu's face darkened, unfounded confidence. Lv Shu and Lu Xiaoyu lived in number 4 yard, Luqing Xingshu Road. This place was once known as the municipal committee's family courtyard. However, that was decades ago. Now, number 4 yard is a widely recognized slum. At this time, it was still a one-story flat, shabby, and without gas or heating. It was no wonder people called it a slum. Lv Shu lived here because he rented a house, a small flat of 80 square meters. In this small third-tier city, it cost 500 yuan a month, excluding utilities. The landlord had no intention of selling the house, he was simply waiting for a good compensation when the house was demolished. The place had been said to be demolished for years, but it never happened because the residents were difficult to deal with. Many people disliked this place, but Lv Shu quite liked it. Each flat had a small courtyard in front which was about 10 square meters. He could plant some garlic and leeks, which saved money because buying them cost money. Lv Shu was short of money because he was an orphan, left at the door of an orphanage when he was a baby. So was Lu Xiaoyu. Usually, if an orphan grows up to 16 years old in an orphanage and is not adopted, they have to fend for themselves in society. Lv Shu was in this situation. His health had always been poor since he was a child. Which family would be willing to adopt a sickly child? As for Lu Xiaoyu, she ran away from the orphanage on her own. The orphanage was used to this. In this era, many orphans couldn't stand the life in the orphanage and ran away to steal, rob, or beg. So, by now, they didn't even bother to call the police. The orphanage didn't have the sense of responsibility like those model orphanages in the movies. Whether the children who ran away were dead or alive, who cared? Lv Shu wanted to send Lu Xiaoyu back to the orphanage. After all, she was in good condition and still young. There must be people willing to adopt her. But Lu Xiaoyu always ran out again. Over time, Lv Shu got used to it. Lu Xiaoyu was a bit abnormal. Compared to children of her age, she was a bit precocious. Of course, Lv Shu might not be very normal either. It wasn't usually obvious, but today's conversation with Ji Wei was just a glimpse. The house they rented was at the end of a row of flats. As they passed a square, a neighbor aunt was boiling Chinese medicine. Lv Shu knew that this family had an old man who had been suffering from illness for many years. The neighbor aunt was the old man's daughter-in-law. The disease seemed to be hereditary. The son was tormented by the disease before the old man passed away. The daughter-in-law was quite filial, taking care of the old man all these years. Although Aunt Lin looked in her 40s and had many wrinkles on her face, Lv Shu could still see from her facial features how beautiful she was when she was young, that a woman like this was willing to take care of her husband's old father alone. There were not many people like this in society. Aunt Lin, good evening, Lv Shu greeted with a smile. Little Shu and Xiaoyu, you're back, the aunt replied with a smile, but just as Lv Shu was about to take Lu Xiaoyu home, Lu Xiaoyu suddenly crouched down and looked at the pot of medicine on the small coal stove with eager eyes. Aunt Lin, can I have a sip? Aunt Lin laughed, this is medicine, Xiaoyu. Lu Xiaoyu thought for a moment, then I'll just take a small sip. Lv Shu's face darkened immediately, come on, stop messing around. It's someone else's medicine, you can't drink it. This was so embarrassing. Lv Shu was at the age when a teenager's self-esteem was growing. Having such a foodie with him was just too much. Didn't that Chinese medicine smell awful? Oh, Lu Xiaoyu reluctantly continued to walk inside, looking back 3 times with each step. She was clearly still thinking about that pot of Chinese medicine. There was a low cough from the house behind Aunt Lin, and the old man sighed, it's good to be young. Aunt Lin smiled and agreed, yes, it's good to be young. Lu Xiaoyu didn't look back at the pot of Chinese medicine anymore, but looked at Lv Shu eagerly. Lv Shu, I want to eat instant noodles, braised beef flavor.